It's always a good night when we've got Miami football talk here at Mark Rogers TV, and especially with Cam Underwood from State of the U. They are breaking down positions at State of the U. So check it out throughout the summer as they carve through the Canes on both sides of the football and get you set for 2018. And, of course, the big opener against LSU. Cam joins us on a regular basis. And, Cam, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. Just enjoying the summer. And yeah, we're doing, position previews, coach previews, player previews, Miami Hurricanes games we love from years past, build a perfect hurricane, top 5 Hurricanes, baseball, basketball, football, non-revenue stuff. In short, we have a lot of great stuff on the website this summer. So please go check it out.
Building the perfect hurricane. So if I remember from seeing that in the past, you may take a quarterback and say, whose arm do we want? Whose leadership do we want? On and on down the line.
Yeah, exactly. So just taking component pieces and like making a Franken cane, if you will. So yeah, just taking like different component parts of Hurricanes past to make a perfect Hurricane player at a specific position. So we did quarterback in the defensive end already, with all the other positions coming this summer. And it, is hopefully something that people enjoy. But yeah, I mean, I know that we're going to do position previews here on the show tonight, but we got a lot of really good stuff and a lot of really great contributors to State of the U. So I really hope that you guys read the stuff, enjoy it, interact with it, because I think that it's good and it's fun. So we're doing, current stuff and past and future. So all rolled up into one, and that's all there for free. So please go read, enjoy.
So definitely, if you want to squeeze each and every position dry, you go to State of the U, you get the full breakdown of where each unit stands. These kind of complement the discussion as we bring a little audio and visual to it as well, and get Cam's narrative that can't be replaced. And so check out State of the U, and also subscribe if you love college football across the board right here. All right, so let's start with the defensive end. So I've got the post up right here, and I will read it in depth, start to finish, a little bit later. But, of course, Chad Thomas is a name that we've talked about and his production in recent years. So he appears to be, along with Trent Harris, the significant losses. So get us started on D end, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Miami lost a bunch of defensive linemen this year. So those two who you mentioned, also DJ Johnson, who was the most heavily recruited player in America in 2017, had almost 100 scholarship offers. He left via transfer at the end of this season. So that's 3 guys from the defensive end position. Plus you lose Anthony Moten at graduation. Plus you lose RJ McIntosh and Kendrick Norton from the defensive tackle position. And Ryan Fines, who transferred out. So that's like 7 dudes, 8 guys or ish up front that were lost either to graduation, the NFL, or transfer. So yeah, there's big shoes to be filled up front. But luckily Miami has lots of talent, and even though it's not as deep as years past, the defensive line, they should be able to overcome those losses. If we're looking at the defensive ends, you got to start with Demetrius Jackson. He's a redshirt senior. He was a former basketball player, transitioned to the football field, and is probably one of, if not the best, run defenders on the defensive line. So he's a guy who's going to play a lot of snaps. But I probably actually should have started with 2 underclassmen who are going to be your starting defensive ends. Joe Jackson. If you've been following our conversations, mine and Mark, for a couple of years, I called him a cyborg as a recruit a few years ago, and he looks like that still, and he plays like that as well. Like, he's really, really good. He's first-round draft talent, like, is honestly what he is. At the other end, you have Jonathan Garvin, who might even be better than Joe Jackson, which I know sounds crazy, but if you just look at his length and his quickness off the ball, his first step is unreal, and he's still growing both in height and weight. So he's adding all of that together to his game. So Jackson and Garvin are going to be your bookend ends, and they can hopefully, play the run, even though, pass rushing is a little bit more of their specialty, but they do have the ability to play the run and get after, the quarterback or any other kind of players if they're chasing down plays from behind and things like that. So Jackson and Garvin are going to start. Demetrius Jackson, no relation to Joe Jackson, is going to be a rotation player. He can play outside, or he can even flex inside in some situations. Scott Patchen, might remember his dad went to Miami. His brother, for some stupid reason, went to Florida. And I think his uncle or grandfather also played in Miami. So, you know, the other Patchen, he just was the black sheep of the family. We don't really talk about him. But Scott Patchen was a 4-star recruit years ago. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He's battled injuries a lot. And if he can be healthy, I think he can be a really good contributing player at the defensive end position. And then last but definitely not least, 6'7" terror on the edge, Gregory Rousseau is a true freshman. And he's huge. He's 6'7", up to 225, almost 230 pounds. But he played at like 200 pounds in high school. Like he played safety and wide receiver and linebacker and some defensive end. And I mean, he just was all over the place because when you got a guy who's 6'6", 6'7", you're going to put him wherever you can put him. But yeah, he got to Miami, added a little bit of weight and started pass rushing full time. And he was so good personally in the first scrimmage with 4 sacks that he was the basically individual who precipitated the change in the offensive line's composition, because they're like, we can't block this kid. And again, this is after they had to block first-round caliber players in Joe Jackson and John Garvin. Russo came out there and he was just unblockable. So, you know, he is a little thin. Obviously, he's brand new, being a true freshman and transitioning from playing mostly like as an edge player, like a skill guy, wide receiver and safety most for the first 3 years of his high school career, and then maybe playing a little bit of weak side backer and some rush end as a senior. But he has all the talent in the world. So that's a good thing to have. At defensive tackle, Gerald Willis III comes back from a leave of absence last year. He's a 5th-year guy, was a former 5-star recruit who went to Florida before he transferred over here. And I mean, he has limited stats from the year that he did play in 2016, but he's a guy who's been Scout Team Player of the Year twice at Miami, which is crazy. So his transfer year and then last year, because he had a personal issue, took a little time off, came back to the team and was on the scout team. And he's a potential first or second team all ACC caliber player. And if he plays that level, then that's going to be a big win for Miami, especially having lost 2 guys to the NFL draft in Norton and McIntosh, who would have started and been of that same kind of caliber. Patrick Bethel is a junior now, and he was a defensive end. Now he's at a tackle, but he's up to 275, 280 pounds. So with that combination there, Willis and Bethel, that's a good group. Jonathan Ford is a sophomore. He played some rotation snaps later in the year last year, but he's hopefully going to take a big step forward. You have Tyreek Martin, who's probably not going to play here. Nesta Silvera was a 4-star recruit, one of the biggest recruits that we got from a talent perspective in 2018. He's going to need to step in and play some rotational snaps. And then Miami should also be getting a grad transfer from Illinois by the name of Tito Odenigbo, who's a defensive tackle as well. And then there's Jordan Miller, who's another true freshman who probably was going to get a red shirt if not for this new rule where you can play in 4 games as a freshman but still retain your red shirt. So down the line, Jordan Miller, might have a couple games where he gets a couple snaps, but he won't really be an impact guy until like next year or the year after that even. But I've given you a few names. So Miami does have talent up front, especially if your starting line of Jackson, Willis, Bethel, and Garvin, if they play to the level of their talent, then Miami will be fine. And then mixing in some of those other guys, Nesta Silvera as he gets more experience, Gregory Rousseau, Scott Patchen, and Jonathan Ford. So on the line, Miami should be at a good spot, even if the numbers aren't exactly optimal right now.
Chad Thomas and Trent Harris, 23 tackles for loss, 13 sacks a year ago. Cam ran down Demetrius Jackson, 7.5 and 3.5. Joe Jackson at 50 stops total, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. And so Jonathan Garvin with just 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks in comparison to Jackson's numbers. And you thinking that Garvin might be more talented. So being more talented versus being a better player right now, 2 different things. So explain your thoughts there.
Yeah, I know that John Garvin was a freshman last year, so he's playing behind all of those guys. He's playing behind everybody who I mentioned. And it just took him a little time. And he had a couple plays where there was a penalty on the opposition or like something else happened, so it negated a couple stats. But, Jonathan Garvin is the real deal. In the spring scrimmage, like he's out there, he's starting, he's running around like his hair is on fire and making plays. And, he's 6'4", 245, 250 pounds. So he has that height, that length, that quick twitch ability and everything, and I know how much of a fan of Joe Jackson and his physicality and his potential and his production I've been. But listening to people and reading articles and hearing the coaches talk about the players, watching the videos that Hurricanes Athletics puts up, and then talking to other beat writers and things like that, I think everybody in Miami really thinks that Jonathan Garvin, his potential is limitless almost. So, I mean, even with Joe Jackson, probably with a strong season this year, he could be a first-round draft pick in the 20s or teens pretty easily because he's that kind of player. I think that when all is said and done, again, especially when you listen to other people who were around the team and cover the team and work with and for the team, when they talk in such glowing terms about Jonathan Garvin, I can't help but buy into what they're seeing. So that's really where I'm coming from.
So we've got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U. You got to join him right there for the very best in Miami football coverage. And also got about 40 people on the chat with dozens and dozens of comments. So we want to run through positions, but I don't want to rush Cam. I don't want to rush our content here because we've got all summer. So we're knocking out the defensive ends, and we'll see how far we get, because I also want to hear Cam's thoughts on some of the recruiting camps going on right now. We've got James Coleman coming on from Gridiron Now to talk Miami, Florida State. These have been fun talks as we've matched up rivals throughout the month of June. It's rivalry month here at MarkRogersTV. So you got to subscribe to the best college football coverage out there. So when people ask questions like this, keep in mind, I'm going to throw this out to Cam. He will probably deliver an answer, but understand that we are projecting, or he in this case is projecting, like 9 months in advance, 10 or 11 months in advance. So don't hold him to this. So the first question I see on here, Cam, is asking what Miami player is going to be the first one taken in the 2019 NFL draft.
First player taken in the 2019 NFL draft is going to be Joe Jackson. I think a close second could be Jaquan Johnson, but Jaquan Johnson is he's 5'11", 205 pounds, so he doesn't have great. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Pause. Excuse me. It's going to be either Joe Jackson or Ahman Richards. And I mean, that's pretty much how it goes. Those two dudes came in the same recruiting class 3 years ago. They're both first-round draft picks, especially if Richards is healthy, depending on team fit. Yeah, that's my answer. Joe Jackson or Ahman Richards. Boom. Next question.
All right. Somebody exhorting us to keep up the great work. That's always good to hear. All right. A lot of LSU trash talking back and forth, either from the LSU side or otherwise.
We'll get to them.
What's that, Cam?
I said we'll get to LSU. I know that
we'll talk plenty of LSU. I can't wait.
They really want to get hype and talk all this stuff. Look, it's the middle of June right now. We got until September. We'll get to you, LSU. Calm yourselves.
And so let's dive into the recruiting camps, because we've got about 10 to 15 minutes before we strike up the Florida State Miami talk and start digging up wide lefts and wide rights. So what's the latest on the recruiting efforts there at Miami?
Yeah, the Richt football camps have been a pretty good interaction, basically, just with the kids and the teams and the communities. So instead of doing individual camps, they're doing 7-on-7s and big man challenge and things like that, where you kind of have group camps and things like that. So it's a little bit of a different paradigm right now. And I think they wanted to change that to see as many kids as possible before the new June to July dead period in recruiting, because there's 4 weeks coming up after this week, I want to say, or after next week, where, it's a dead period where you cannot really meet with the kids at all. So they're trying to get ahead of the game and do things just a little bit differently. So that's been going pretty well. Miami's gotten a couple 2020 commits, Elijah Roberts from Miami Columbus, and there's a wide receiver who just committed, Marcus Fleming from Southridge. There's been positive movement there. Now, there's been a couple of 2019 kids who Miami's trending up with. Tyreek Stevenson from Southridge, who's everybody's All-American. He's been to Miami 2 weeks in a row, and it might be even 3 weeks in a row if he comes this weekend. There's a couple other guys, your Takori Couches, your from Chaminade Madonna, your just a lot of different guys are coming down. Jarvis Brownlee from Carroll City, he recently committed in this current class. After having gotten an offer, came down to camp. Things like that. Jason Munoz from St. Thomas Aquinas, defensive tackle, 2019. He broke his leg last year, didn't play at all, but he was a terror in the spring when he got back on the field for Aquinas. Miami evaluated him then, said, come on down to camp. We want to see you in person. Came down to camp, was the MVP for the lineman that day, showed that he was 100%. Measured in at 6'3", 274 pounds, which is a good projectable size for a defensive tackle. And so, we took him, we committed and we think that we have a steal. Miami thinks they have a steal there because people are slow on the Jason Munoz train because he didn't play as a junior, which is like arguably your biggest recruiting year for your recruiting profile. So in that interaction or between those multiple things, and I named already 5 different guys, Keontre Smith, who flipped from Kentucky to Miami. That's 6 people are recruits across 2019 and 20 classes that I've mentioned. And that seems to be gaining traction because you get the whole teams there, but also the teams with the star players. So Miami Southridge has been there a couple times with Tyreek Stevenson and all the kids who play there. So obviously you're going to give the superstar the real one-on-one time, but you also get to connect with the rest of their teammates and see, okay, whoever else in this class or the next class you might want to connect to. So yeah, the Mark Richt football camps are going pretty well right now. There's a couple more that are coming up, but there's one this weekend, and then I want to say next weekend, maybe before the dead period, before Paradise Camp this year is July the 28th, which is like that weekend right after the end of the dead period for recruiting. So there's like a full month from the end of July or June to the middle end of July where you cannot really meet with the kids. So just trying to get out in front of things. Miami's done a couple satellite camps. Locally, going to the local youth parks and things like that to try to build that connection, because we know that recruiting is a multiple year interaction. So we're trying to get out to the community and meet the kids and all these kind of things so that, when little Deontay from, Carroll City becomes like superstar Deontay in like 7 years, you remember that one time that you went to this little, youth camp and whatnot. So, you got to do those kind of community grassroots things. But we're seeing that, Mark Richt has done those for 3 years here now, and those seem to be a positive interaction. So, between the 7-on-7 camps with the big man challenge and then, Paradise coming up later, which already looks like it's going to have a really nice visitor list, which is going to be key, especially because that first weekend back, being able to have kids on campus, pretty much everybody in America is going to try to have their spotlight camp that day or that weekend. So Florida, I already know they're trying to have Florida or Friday Night Lights that same night. I know that Florida State's trying to have their, I don't know what they're calling it now with Willie Taggart, but their July event, they're trying to have it at the 28th. Georgia, the G Day, you're probably going to have that there. Alabama with the A Day, Ohio State with their Friday Night Lights. Like pretty much everybody's going to try to get all the kids that they want that same weekend. So hopefully Miami's able to do that well. And I think by having these kids come down to the first camp, the 7-on-7 camp, and really building that connection to lock them into Paradise Camp, hopefully, in a couple 6-8 weeks, whatever it is from now, we see that pay off.
I shouldn't have to sell this. All you have to do is listen to Cam. Go to State of the U to get more Miami football coverage from Cam and the rest of the staff right there. They know Miami football inside and out, and obviously all the sports, but we talk nothing but college football here. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like and comment as well. That helps out the channel and helps us bring you better and more frequent content. And as I look at the chat, if you guys want to knock yourselves out, trash talking back and forth, go at it. I love it. That's fine. That's why it's there as well. But if you want questions and comments to Cam, certainly take advantage. But I see nothing there but a lot of score predictions and trash talking back and forth. And again, that's why it's there. Have at it and go nuts. So we've enjoyed Rivalry Month here at Mark Rogers TV with a lot of great conversations. Florida State Clemson, even though it's a very new rivalry. Florida Tennessee, we talked Florida State. We've talked Tennessee Kentucky, Ohio State Michigan, a lot of different rivalries, including USC UCLA. But Miami and Florida State may be the king of the rivalries during the 1990s, coming up in about 10 minutes once we get James Coleman on the line from Gridiron Now. So as you were discussing the recruiting camps and what's at stake there, Cam, I was just thinking My question for you is, sure, there's a ton of guys out there that you would love to have, but as you say your prayers at night or are anticipating maybe Christmas in July with a certain commit that's going to become a hard commit to Miami, who would that guy be?
I mean, the real thing for Miami is getting linemen on both sides of the ball. If you look at last year's recruiting class and even the last couple with Mark Richt, the skill position recruiting is way in front of the big man recruiting. I mean, skill positions, Miami has arguably the best wide receiving room in America right now. And that's just based off of the last 2, maybe 3 years of recruiting. So, really just getting big guys. So Evan Neal from IMG Academy, 6'8", 300 and, well, he was 391. People say he's down to like 365 or 355, something like that, playing offensive tackle. That's a guy that you want. His mom is a Hurricanes fan. He's visited a couple of times, and we're putting the full press on him because we need tackles, and we need a tackle of his caliber. So somebody like that, somebody like a Chris Bogle from Cardinal Gibbons, which is around the corner from my new house. Or where I'm living. It's not my house, but whatever. But yeah, he's a 4-star defensive end. The Braylon Ingraham from St. Thomas Aquinas, who just transferred over from Dillard, who plays defensive tackle. Lloyd Summerall from Auburndale, who's another 6'5", 6'6", long, lean edge rusher guy. I mean, any and all of those guys, especially just the linemen, that's really where I want to see things take off. In addition to a Tyreek Stevenson from Southridge, who is an All-American, and we need a dude like that in our safety room. You want, I would say that's really where it is. Everything else is going to fall into place. And obviously I would like a quarterback. So hopefully Michael Johnson Jr., who's pretty much Miami's only targeted quarterback right now. So all of our eggs are in the Michael Johnson Jr. basket. And I would like to see that pay off because, he's a dynamic 6'4", 201 pound, 190 pound, whatever it is, dual threat kind of kid. He might not come in and play early, but he's the kind of talent that you need. And I really believe that you need a quarterback in every single class. And I mean, he's an Under Armour All-American, so Johnson is nothing to sneeze at. And every school that's also recruiting him already has 1 or 2 quarterbacks committed. And Miami's put so many resources into recruiting Johnson. Like John Richt, son of Mark Richt, quarterback coach, has flown out to Oregon countless times. He did 5 times in the spring evaluation period. He did multiple times. That was last year's period in the fall. So he did 5 weeks in a row in the fall. He did a couple more times in the spring, took an unofficial visit down here and all these kind of things. Like, I mean, it's just, you're putting the full court press on Michael Johnson Jr. And like at some point, you got to make a decision, man. I mean, and everywhere else that you're looking, it's like, okay, well, Nebraska, they have 2 guys committed. Oh, well, how about here? They get somebody committed the next day. How about here? The Oregon, where his dad is an assistant coach, they decided to take another lower-rated kid from the state of Washington instead of Michael Johnson Jr., who's a higher-rated kid who lives in Eugene, Oregon. So they're like, oh, he's going to go to Oregon with his dad. If he was going to go to Oregon, that would have already happened. So I'm just wondering, like, why are we still waiting? And I think, like, by that Paradise Camp, that July time, like, yeah, Michael Johnson Jr. really needs to make a decision. So between him, Evan Neal, Lloyd Summerall, Braylon Ingraham, Chris Bogle, I would say those would be, and Tyreek Stevenson, those 7 would probably be at the top of my list. And I know that, like, hardcore recruiting fans are saying a name that I'm forgetting, and I'm sorry.
So we've got about 50 people on the line, and as it typically happens, it takes people a little while to find us. So what you need to do is, obviously, after we're done with the discussion with Cam and later with James Coleman from Gridiron Now, you jump on the video processes and posts in just a few minutes after we're done, and you catch up with what you missed. And of course, Cam, as soon as I said that you're open for comments and questions, we got about 10 or 15, like, actually pretty decent questions here. So we're not going to be able to get to all of them. Maybe I'll store these later, put them in a bank, and we'll get back to a mailbag discussion with Cam here soon. So maybe the first one's not necessarily one of the good questions, but just because of it being a little provocative, I'll throw it out there. Howard Smooth asking about and hopefully this is a typo. Hopefully he understands it's Ken Dorsey and not Kent Dorsey, but Ken Dorsey is offensive coordinator.
I mean, that would have been nice in the past, but he's the assistant AD at FIU now. So it seems from the outside that he's trying to get into athletic administration at a level that's higher than football coaching. So while, I mean, yeah, it would have been nice because obviously he was the quarterback coach in Carolina, with the Carolina Panthers, I should say. So when Cam Newton won his MVP, that Ken Dorsey was the position coach there. But yeah, I just don't think that he's, I mean, and I've seen the pictures of him on the field at FIU football practice because, like, he works at FIU now. But it seems to me that he's trying to take his trajectory higher than just the football field in athletic administration.
Okay. I am attempting to get James on the line here, and we'll throw out one more question for Cam. Cam basically answered that one, considering he went through a number of recruits. This person asking for the top 3 that he would like to see. Scheme and personnel. What kind of scheme and personnel? Would you make any changes in scheme and personnel to the offense?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to see maybe a little bit more motion, a little bit more, I call it hard play action, where, you know, you put your back to the defense, that kind of a thing. And then just being as creative as you can be. You know, I mean, you have all the athletes in the world. Like, you're not any, except for a 6'8" tight end. And actually, Will Mallory, 6'6", so he's not far away from that. But you pretty much have every single type of player on offense that you want. I mean, obviously, the offensive line needs to be better, but you have 4 or 5 running backs who have a diverse skill set. You have 8 receivers. You have 2 new freshman tight ends, and then, you know, some also ran kind of guys behind them. But I mean, I want to see wrinkles on top of wrinkles. So if we're doing the read option, I want to see a wrinkle on top of that. We're putting DJ Dallas at Wildcat. I want to see some new wrinkles on that. I mean, the basics should obviously, your staples need to be good, but I don't think that there's a limit to what the personnel will let you do creatively, as long as you know, instruct it and tie it together well. So you can't just have like a random aberrant play that doesn't look like anything else. But as long as things, you know, fit in the system of the offense, and with the offense that we run, I think they will. I think that we can be as creative as we want.
So while we wait for James Coleman from Gridiron Now to jump on and start up our rivalry chat, FSU and Miami, Jarren Williams, N'Kosi Perry, someone's asking who's the better player?
More athletic, N'Kosi Perry, more polished, Jarren Williams. And I think that there's a good chance we could see both of them this year, especially with the new 4-game freshman redshirt rule, where Jarren Williams can play in games and still retain his redshirt. Now, had this been enacted before last season, I guarantee you that in that Pittsburgh game last year, and probably in the bowl game, and maybe even in the ACC championship game, but basically from the last 3 or 4 games, we would have seen N'Kosi Perry last year. And now Jarren is in the advantageous position where he could potentially play in games and keep his red shirt. So, yeah, on the athletic basis, I think that N'Kosi Perry is a little bit further ahead. On like a procedural, polished skill basis, I think that that's going to be Jarren Williams.
All right, we got Cam Underwood, State of the U on the line. Please join him there for the best in Miami football coverage. Of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel as I break down the nation coast to coast. And another great contributor here in James Coleman from Gridiron Now, covers Florida State, played at Florida State, was a Florida State fan even before he hit the field in Tallahassee. So we have had a whole lot of fun with James and a number of contributors talking rivalries across the country. So this one stands at 32-30 as I check out Wikipedia, with, of course, the Canes breaking a losing streak with the last-second touchdown pass down that right sideline last year in Tallahassee, winning 24-20. Before that, Florida State with, 7 consecutive wins, if I'm counting correctly there. So, James, since you're just jumping on the line, we'll start with you. And, of course, the unique angle that you bring is your remembrance of these rivalries. So we'll go back to 2002 to 2005. And I definitely have some questioning for both of you concerning the other party that could wedge themselves into this rivalry from the state of Florida, but we'll get to that later because it's an interesting take I think you both have on that other school. But we'll start with the 2 primary players here, Florida State and Miami. James, and some of your memories.
The biggest one is actually the first ever FSU game I ever went to was 1999, excuse me, 1999, FSU versus Miami. I watched all the games when I was growing up, even when we were in New Jersey with my family being a transplant to Florida. But even when I was growing up in Tallahassee, I watched a lot of the games. But that was the first time that I ever really went to a major Division I college football game. Before that, I actually got a chance to watch Miami play FAMU during the years growing up. That's where my mother went to school. My father went to school. But I remember those games and thinking like, man, I want to be able. When I saw it live, I was like, I want to be on the field in that game. It was a lot of energy. I liked the way those guys played. A lot of talking, trash, a lot of fast, a lot of speed, a lot of violence. I loved it. Then when I got a chance to play it in 2002, unfortunately, I was on the bad end of a lot of epic games. 0-2 with the missed field goal. Greg Jones went for 200 yards in the first half, and just getting a chance to see Willis McGahee and just what an amazing running back he was. And then 2003 in the pouring down rain, they did not recover that onside kick. It was like 5 yards out of bounds, but whatever. I think Ron Cherry, referee, and Ron Cherry hated. Playing them in an Orange Bowl as well, where I'm on one of the iconic FSU plays where I got a great block on Vilma, and then Greg Jones and Sean Taylor got an opportunity to get really acquainted. Seeing that play live was awesome. 2004, another loss, but just again those teams, and then obviously in 2005 where I scored a touchdown against Randall. Unfortunately, Leon Williams had to be on the wrong end of getting trucked in. I know Brandon Merriweather. I know other people who know Brandon Merriweather. And one day I'll get a chance to meet him and ask him why did he come and help his friend? He's there. He's clearly there. He could have maybe it wouldn't have worked anyway. It didn't matter. But bottom line is it was some great times to be there. Great games. I so many like Greg Threet went to competing against him in high school in Tallahassee. You get a really chance to know a lot of these guys, and we talk mad trash, but from a player's perspective, from when I was there, and a lot of the knows that I know, and a lot of the Canes that I know, we just talk trash. And when it's that weekend, there are no friends. But then after that, we all played in the league together. We all played in all-star games together. We all just go in and talk, and just kick it up. We can have a cookout, but like I told you in the other one, I just don't like Florida guys. I can't get. I'll get over that one day, maybe when I'm 50.
We'll get to Florida for you guys in just a second because I can't wait to hear it out of both of you. But I'm looking at the score ledger year to year, and it's bringing back a lot of memories. And the other thing I didn't need the score ledger to know is that from about the mid 80s on until very recently, there's a lot of small numbers next to both teams' names because they were always very high in the rankings. We talked last night, James, about Ohio State, Michigan, Auburn, Alabama kind of being the gold standard all time. Army, Navy's a different deal. That's in its own class, but all time. But once the 80s hit, wow, it's tough to trump this one. And the talent on the field, the speed on the field, Cam, in regards to matching up Miami and Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people tune in for. I mean, you know well that I'm from Detroit, and I would watch, the two games from the state of Florida that I would see every year were Miami, Florida State, and then Florida, Florida State. And just the speed pops off the screen, and then when I was a freshman in 2000, when we finally got off the schneid and beat them then, I was in the Orange Bowl. That was the first time I had, seen that. And just, even having gone to Michigan games growing up, even having seen these other teams and thinking that I had a good idea or handle on, this is what top level athletes move like. This is what they look like on the field. Nah, not at all. Because Florida, Miami and Florida State, excuse me, is it's a different kind of beast, and I don't like them necessarily, but like James is alluding to, I at least respect Florida State, there's no friends during that week, like period, like whatever. But outside of that, generally, like I respect Florida State, they play hard, they do their thing. We play hard, we do our thing. There's other teams that I don't necessarily respect or will ever respect. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, I mean, just looking all over the field in all those games, especially, James was talking about the games that he played in from 2002 to '05. Like on both sides of the field, those are guys who made the league, like whose names like they had these iconic moments. Like, I didn't even go to Florida State. I don't like Florida State. Like they're not my squad, but I remember when Greg Jones trucked Buddy from North Carolina. You know what I'm talking when he's like
Dexter Reed, I was there.
Exactly right. But like it was that kind of a play where I don't even really mess with them, but that was so iconic that you even remember that. You know what I mean? So like when you put those two programs together, the Hurricanes and Seminoles, like obviously you're gonna have some of the best teams that you've ever seen, some of the best athletes you've ever seen putting together, and I think that's really what made this has made this rivalry great, especially with both teams really from that last 35, 40 years being two of the gold standard programs in college football.
So you guys will do much better just going back and forth and not me getting in the way of the conversation. So maybe I'll just get a conversation started by saying, hit me with the highlights, hit me with the low points in terms of the gut wrenchers that still stick with you, still sting, and then those ones that still make you smile, make you bow out the chest and feel really good. So we'll start with you, James, and then I can kick back and just enjoy this.
All right.
Well, I mean, the real thing, all the wide rights and then, missed field goals. If FSU had a field goal kicker, God knows how many. I mean, we've had good ones like Sebastian Janikowski, some guys like that. But if we were able to make some clutch kicks, who knows how many national championships FSU could have. Also, just not ducking each other. Like, they rose up at the same time as we rose up, and they were there. Like I told you, little tidbit, little known college history fact that people don't know. There is one of our rivals that there's actually, they had to create a law for us to have to play them every year. It's actually illegal for us to not play each other in football. But with Miami, if FSU did not play, put it in perspective, if FSU didn't play Miami in the 80s, the only time there probably would have been the FSU Miami bowl game for the national championship. Like, yep. The losses, and FSU not playing in the conference really hurt because the losses that we had were to a Miami or somebody else who was another prominent program, and there could be a 2-loss national championship or a 1-loss national championship, champion team, and they didn't have the same prestige as FSU had with their record. It's just there was very heavy conference slants. So FSU, even as great a program as they've been over the last 35 years, could be even more epic. But it's the choice of Coach Bowden choosing not to duck anybody and playing guys when they're the best and playing home and homes and not having to have different stipulations. One of the things that I remember when people talk, and you brought up a really good point, Mark, where the scores were so close. You're talking about, a field goal, 2 points here, 1 point, things like that. To put it in perspective, I give, like, they don't understand how good those Miami teams were that I played against. I played against 13. I counted. I might not have them all right, but from what I can remember, because actually I don't think I counted Calais Campbell because he was there, but I didn't play against Calais. Calais was a younger guy. I think he ended up not seeing the field till he was a junior heavy. But I played against 13 first-round draft picks on defense. Not 13 first-round draft picks. I played against 13 first-round draft picks on defense, not including guys like Rocky McIntosh. Rocky McIntosh was a second-round pick. Yep. Not including guys like Andre Johnson on offense. Not including Willis McGahee. Not including I didn't play against sports, but with McGahee, Frank Gore, the offense. There's a couple offensive linemen that they had that went to the league that played well. Again, there was just so much firepower that they had during that time, and it was just, it was amazing to watch. Sean Taylor, God rest his dead. Sean Taylor is probably the greatest competitor I've ever played against, and that made a lot of people in Noel Nation sad with his untimely death. But it's just that kind of respect going through that, and we were able to hold our own. And we had a lot of guys that went on to the NFL, but these were guys that not only went to the NFL, but went to the NFL and played very well, and be remembered for a long time. One really good athlete actually real hard. I'm gonna tell a story about what goes down in the breakdown in the film room. Is we circled Vince Wilfork. And Vince Wilfork was an ironic type of dominant. He's a large man. He's always been large. He could, in 10 plays, he only fired off 4 times. The problem is it was never 4 plays in a row. And he was so big that you could not just move him out when he didn't fire off. He just plugged the hole. But when he fired off, there wasn't a damn thing you could do about it. In the Orange Bowl, when we played them, he split a double team. And I'm going to ISO up on the linebacker. And I remember running by him and like, yo, that's not how the play is designed. That guy's not be in the backfield. So God bless, my soul. It could have been me. He could have hit me, and I'm glad he didn't. But unfortunately, it sacrificed the running back in Leon Washington. And he caught Leon as he was getting the ball. And then he took like 2 steps after he hit him. And then he swan dived and fell all of that belly onto Leon. I think Leon actually went inside of Vince for a second and out. And it was just crazy when you see that. And you're just like, man, and then, again, you go see him have a dynamic NFL career, win Super Bowls and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I remember that play and everything, and just because I was still in college at that time, so I went to the bowl game because I live down here now and everything. Just like that, ooh, just one of those kind of plays. But just the talent was everywhere, like you're talking about, and Miami's been on the good side of a lot of close games against Florida State, luckily, for whatever reason. Even that game that Ja'Cory Harris won, whatever that was, 2009, the last time that we won up until last year. That wasn't a field goal. That was, 4th and goal from the 7-yard line. And,
no, that was because of BS Carlo Nigel Bradham, if I remember correctly.
What I'm trying to say is the score was not because of a field goal. The score was because the game was close and you had a chance to win on a different kind of play. That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
The 7-year, losing streak, obviously, like all of those sting, and especially, the ones when, Miami had games or could have realistically had the game won. And then Dalvin Cook just decided, you know what, I'm not going to take that. And, single-handedly won those games because he's that kind of athlete. And those are pretty bad. Obviously, especially when you get a little bit of a lead, not 2013, because that was one of the better teams that you guys had. And we were pretty bad then. But, the 2014, 2016, even 2000, well, no, that was 2016, it was just gut wrenching. You get a tying field goal or a touchdown, and I'm in that end zone where that block happened, and I'm right there and everything. So that one stung, but luckily, like I said, we have games to remember that were good. Obviously last year, obviously 91, obviously 92, obviously 2000, my freshman year. But then that was an epic fight because that was just haymaker after haymaker. And I know that people want to put it on Matt Munyon for missing that 50-yarder at the buzzer or whatever, but that would have tied the game in 2000. I wouldn't have won it. So I think that's a different kind of caliber of game. But getting back to something you said early, yeah, I respect Florida State because regardless of the conference situation, regardless of the schedule situation, we play each other. And obviously it could go either way. And it's a close rivalry. It's 32 for Miami and 30 for Florida State. So yeah, we talk about those ones that Miami got over Florida State, but y'all got us damn near just as much. You know what I mean? So we're not ducking anybody. We're not saying, oh, we're not going to, and I'm going to say it now, like the University of Florida, as I look directly into the camera, because they're scared. And I know they want to say, oh, well, we play in the SEC and y'all always play in the SEC. Miami was in the Big East. Florida State was independent before they got into the ACC, and yet and still, both of our programs found a way to work it out. And Florida State's here saying, look, we're going to play Miami every year. And then the legislature had to come in and say, okay, we're going to write in that law. So Florida State had to play every year. So Florida State's in here playing an elite schedule in the ACC, for years. They're playing Miami out of conference, and they're playing Florida out of conference. But Florida's sitting over here and saying, our schedule's too hard, so we can't play Miami. Like, I mean, like, come on, man. Like, this is sports. Like, honestly, just put us on the schedule. And the thing that angers me about Florida so much, and James, I know this is going to be a little bit different for you because y'all play them, is their players, alumni, and fan base talk so much noise about Miami, about being better than, being able to beat Miami, when they've beaten Miami one time in my lifetime, and that's when we had 2 freshman quarterbacks going up against Tim Tebow and them. But they want to say, oh, we're better, we'll do all this. And I just say, line it up, put us on the schedule, and then all of a sudden they start copping pleas, saying, I don't know if we can do that. But how are you going to sit over here and talk about you being better demonstrably at football, but refuse to put that on the field? Which is why I cannot wait till next year's season opener, because we're going to get in it, boy.
Yeah, I will say I am interested in how that's going to work.
Oh, I know how that's going to work. We're going to be playing that fight song a whole lot come 2019. Let's go.
I mean, I kind of want Miami to win, but if there is a way that you both could lose, it would be epic. Just for the trolling, that's all. But,
and I appreciate that.
But I mean, and also just even the Labor Day kickoff, the opening game. I remember that was the worst decision that FSU ever made.
Yes,
allowing that, and I'm sure Miami would say the same thing too. But we worked an entire offseason, beat Miami. My senior year, we finally beat them. Finally beat you guys. We worked from January to that day. It was all beat Miami. Matter of fact, we did drills based upon all of the epic fourth quarter comebacks that Miami had. And so we did it. Like one of them, we had the lead and we had the game won. It was only a minute left. So we did a minute worth of exercises after we did our workouts. So we did all this work and we finally win. Then what? We beat Miami. All right, what do we do now? That's all we talked about. We kind of got out of our element. But but when it's in this normal schedule, I think we normally played my first 2 years and all the other senior, because the other upperclassmen were mine. I think it was about game 5 is when we traditionally played. Most of the time,
October, that first weekend.
Yeah, there's always been a little moving around, but most of the time, because the other part of it is we're full pads all the way up until Miami before we started moving the game around. So we knew, we beat Miami. The older guys who had played in the national championships had seen it. They're like, guys, man, we beat Miami. Practice is cake. We going just our full pads is just shoulder pads and shorts one day, and then we're shorts the rest of the week. Kind of an NFL schedule, kind of NFL model. But when you lose, you're gonna go a couple extra weeks with full pads and you're gonna bang. But just the way you go into it, the fight songs, and I've shared with you before, Mark, and I've shared it in my writing. I was more of a fan of FSU, but I was going to Miami. I liked Miami. Randy Shannon was one of the coldest guys I've ever seen in my life, and it really broke my heart to see him go to the University of Florida to coach. But I guess you gotta do what you gotta do. But when he came on my high school campus, which was on Florida State's campus, full orange and green, I was like, yo, you was a bold brother. And I like it. He lied to me because I mean, not necessarily lied to me about what would happen, but he was like, man, you remind us of Ray Lewis. And I go back and I think about my film in high school. I wasn't that damn good. I was good. Ray Lewis good, and I knew that. But
there's no shame in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just being honest,
and the greatest linebackers of all time.
Telling me something. But watching that national championship game against Nebraska and watching Vilma almost kill somebody 2 consecutive plays,
bang, bang.
That and stuff like that, I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. And then knowing all the other stuff and the playmaker, a lot of the other guys that came out of that, the U. And then when I was coming up in high school, the U had its resurgence, and that's why I get upset sometimes with you fans, and I get it. But this ain't what that was. That was it. And then before that, it's getting close. It's feeling it's like it, but I'm like, just let it happen. But CMR and knowing CMR from Florida State days, seeing what he's done at Georgia, he is definitely making them better and I'm interested to see what they can do. And I respect Manny Diaz, Ron Dugans, another Tallahassee guy, Doak legend. Just the recruiting battles, everything that comes down to it, it's always fun. It's more like fighting your brother. Like I don't want to kill a Miami fan or a Miami player. I just don't want to lose to him. And you get competitive, and fights happen in that one too, and things like that. But it's never like it's all love at the end of it. I don't ever remember shaking hands with Florida. I really I take pleasure in watching Florida lose. If they could lose every game, I'll be satisfied. Miami is just more so. I don't care if they lose every game. It'll be cool, whatever. But I just don't care. Florida, I actually really I'll root for the other team. If they playing the devil, I'm rooting for the devil.
I mean, I don't know if I'm going that far with it, but I mean, I'm rooting against them. I mean, that Tennessee game hurt me with the throwback, that they finally hit, because I wanted that same kind of thing, man. But it's so different when there's such a close relationship between the players and the coaches and the teams and everything, like Miami and Florida State. Like when I was in college, like my dorm for all 4 years was like right as close to the Wellness Center and the Green Tree practice fields as you could get. And man, they would be out there at like 6:45 in the morning with that damn war chant at ignorant volume levels. Just like, okay, cool. So for every staffer who's walking in the building, you just heard just blaring. And so it's like, okay, I'm walking to class, like around the lake, like, oh, like you heard that everywhere. Cause I mean, it was the same kind of thing. Like, yo, we're going to be singularly focused on Florida State, to get by, obviously. And, I know that their practices got a little bit better. I didn't play there, but I had some friends on the team and whatnot. So they would talk about, oh yeah, if we beat Florida State. And luckily we did beat Florida State like in a row all the times when I was in college. Like, oh yeah, after that we had, easy day or a walkthrough or just shells or shorts and helmets and anything, easy with that, so that was obviously good for them and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's the game that you circle. It's the game that you look forward to. It's the game where the day every single year. Like we could do lists all the time on websites because people love lists and things like that. You can talk about the hardest defense or the best this and the best that, but it's really Miami, Florida State, and then everything else. And that's just how it is every single year. Now, obviously, for the Canes, next year against in 2019, we played Florida to start and Florida State. So there's going to be, kind of dueling dates. But on an every year basis, we are going to circle Florida State because y'all are our biggest rival. You're the biggest and baddest team that we play. And I think and everybody you can look at the film and just be at the game. Everybody tries harder because it means more. You know what I mean? Like you got dudes from Tallahassee on both teams. You got dudes from Miami Southridge or Miami Central or whatever on both sides of the field. So everybody wants to win, man. It's just pride to a level that you don't usually see.
I think it goes down to where the recruiting hotbeds is of South Florida being such a big hotbed. You have so many South Florida guys on Florida State's team, and you have equal amounts of guys on Miami's team. And like you said, there's guys from Tallahassee that have gone down that way and and vice versa. And now even with Jacksonville being like, you have a good amount of Jacksonville guys, and you got some people there. And I want to say it's not. Is it Casey's son? No, it's not Casey. Well, Brad Johnson's son, I want to say. I think maybe signed, which I know he got offered. I don't remember.
No, it was Casey's son.
It was Casey's son, but I know you got what's Monster's real name? Bradley Jennings' son. I know Bradley Jennings' son down there. And, Bradley's going to stand on the sideline because Bradley's a scary dude anyway, in his full FSU gear and dare you to mess with him. Anybody who's been shot 3 times, I ain't messing with that dude. Monster's cold. But because you have the guys that played at Carroll City, and half of the better players went up this way. The other half stayed there, Miami Northwestern. And it's just like those Miami guys being like, yo, we got to win because I got to go back home, and I don't want to hear this. And then you're going, like I remember going down to Brevard County during Thanksgiving where my aunt was at, and people see me in my FSU gear before I have to travel back up to Tallahassee, and they're like, man, we're going to beat y'all. And I'm like, whatever, man. How you a Miami fan in Brevard County? You ain't never been to Miami. But, just talking about those things and thinking like what Stanford Samuels Still the hardest hit that I've ever seen in my life.
Dirty,
with
dirty,
Boosie.
dirty,
No, I'm gonna say
dirty,
this.
dirty,
The person who
dirty.
trouble for
He speared him. No, that's why the man had to be in the hospital, because he came across the blind side and speared the man. Nah, dirty, dirty.
If Brian doesn't throw that pass, that hit doesn't happen. He should have never thrown that pass. That's the first.
Well, I mean, yeah, duh. Still, like, I'm not saying
got
that he just went out there and went on the sideline and speared the man. Like, obviously, there's other factors in there. Yet and still, even with that pass being thrown, that was dirty. He speared him.
I mean, it was the greatest hit I've ever seen in my life. Like, I've never seen some pouring that. Mark, I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah. Give me a year and set up the play. What's going on here?
Right. 2003, pouring down rain game.
Okay, I watched the game.
ESPN Classic, I believe. Everybody's uniforms are soaked, like head to toe, wet. Stanford Samuels, the first Boosie I ever met in my life, is a DB, maybe 170. His son right now is going to be one of the better players at Florida State next year. Stanford Samuels the third. Roscoe Parrish is running the drag across the middle. Brock Berlin throws it late. If you'd have thrown it a little bit earlier, it could have been a better play. Throws it a little late, right into a waiting Stanford Samuels, and I kid you not, all the water that was on Roscoe Parrish's jersey evaporated. He was completely dry for 2 seconds.
Speared him.
Right?
I mean, it was a dirty play. Like,
yeah,
it's true. He was running the drag route and Boosie hit him. It was a dirty play. Like, regardless. Like, I mean, it was dirt. Like, go back and watch. And actually, you know what? If you look up 2003 Miami, Florida State, you can watch the highlights from Cane Freak 2001 on YouTube. Go watch the play. I'm not going to do it right now because we're obviously here and I need my audio for that.
Watching
it was
right
a dirty
now.
play. He speared the man. The man spent the night in the hospital with internal bleeding. And not from just getting hit. Because, look, John Billman hit people hard. Sean Taylor hit people hard. Ray Lewis hit people hard. They didn't have to spear nobody. Come on, man.
When John Billman hit a guy, it was a guy who had an opportunity to catch and make a football move. Roscoe was running full speed and trying to catch the pass, and like it just one guy going full speed east and another guy going full speed west. Dirty. Something bad happened when they connect.
I know. Exactly. Something bad did happen because Stanford Samuels dirty ass speared him. That's what happened. That was bad.
That's why we have insurance.
I mean, I guess. I mean, it came in handy that day, boy. Let me tell you.
Wasn't that a clean hit in 2003, though, Cam?
No, that wasn't a clean hit. They
Not
called it clean. That wasn't a clean hit. No.
There was no penalty on that. It was a pass breakup. No penalty. They called spearing back in that day. There's no spearing.
Sure they did.
Should have called it on that play. I don't know why they didn't. No, that was dirty. Like, period. Like, nah. That was straight dirty. That was filthy. That was disgusting. That was dirty.
I mean, all those superlatives that you added to it are all true, except for dirty.
No, it was dirty. That was a dirty hit. I said it then. I say it now. I believe it to the core of my being. Every time I see that, my blood boils because that was almost said a 4-letter word that the FCC would not like. But it was dirty.
The only bad thing that happened in that game is the wrong team won. But outside,
it was very much disagree with that. The right team came out on top. Hey, but you know what? You talk about rooting for other teams. We lost to Virginia Tech and Tennessee the next 2 weeks and 3 weeks away from that. So I mean, I know that you got a little bit from that, but no, we were good. No, that was a right team.
It was I mean, like I said, it was I actually was pissed because we didn't take care of our business. We did not take care of business against Maryland. Yeah, that year we only lost to 2 teams. We lost to Miami twice. No, Clemson. If we took care of business in Clemson, I'd probably have a national championship ring. I'm a little upset about that. But, 2003 and 2004 Florida State teams severely underachieved. Actually, a lot of those teams underachieved. But the cool thing is most of us got a chance to get at least a cup of coffee in the NFL. We played with each other. Like when I was in New Orleans, I got a chance to go on, reacquaint with Vilma. I played with a couple guys. Who was your fullback?
Najee.
No, not Najee. It was after him.
Quadrant Hill.
Yeah. He was in the All-Star game. A couple other guys. I think Leon was in the All-Star game in Las Vegas that we played in. And again, like I said, a lot of those guys, I follow them. I see their career. They're in coaching now. They're getting done with playing football. I talked trash to Calais Campbell because I covered the Jaguars, and he's been up here. And, he did tell me they were going to win. They also told me the Jaguars were going to be good, and I told him he was crazy for both of those statements. And he ended up being right. So it happens.
I mean, exactly. So, maybe you should put the haterade down for a little bit. Maybe listen to somebody with some knowledge outside of yourself a little bit, and just interact with people like that. You feel me?
Broke clock is right twice a day. And he was right twice. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, a broke program was right 7 times in a row. I don't know how y'all got that together, but, hey, it happens.
I'll tell you exactly. Al Golden is one of the greatest college football coaches of all time.
Just like Chris Ricks is the best college quarterback of all time with his 0-5 against Miami.
To Chris's defense, he only problem Chris had against, he just could not beat the Canes. He beat Florida. I mean, again, that was a great Miami Hurricanes team. But Al Golden was a good. I mean, Randy Shannon should have got a better shot down there. But CMR, I mean, the only knock I have on CMR is that he's never, outside of this FSU game, is he's never won a game that matters. And I mean, I thought that team that y'all had last year, after getting over the hump with FSU, I did not see maybe 2 of the losses, maybe Wisconsin, just from a football knowledge of Wisconsin, knowing that they play a specific style of football. But I just did not see the 3 straight. Well, my bad. Let me forget Wisconsin. I did see Clemson coming. The other 2 is Wisconsin and was it Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
I didn't see those coming. I thought that was interesting.
I mean, that was just a luck runs out situation. I mean, Rozier he's trick or treat. You go, everybody's like, oh, he did all these numbers and whatnot. Dude went 4 for 16 for 34 yards and an interception in the first half against Florida State last year. Now, I know what the end numbers were, but you're talking 25% completions with the interception. Like, dog, what are you doing? And people are like, oh, no, he's great. He's great. I said, it's going to catch up with us when a team stacks the box. They figure out a way to defeat our zone blocking, and they say, you got to hit these throws, and he's not going to be able to do it. And that was Pittsburgh.
Which I still don't understand why Tavares McFadden was playing the defense that he played in that situation when you're playing for a field goal. Yeah, I mean, it's trash.
5-star.
See, that's the thing. One thing that I'll say again about that no other criminal will say, because I'm a dope boy and I did mat drills. I could do this real mat drills, not what y'all doing down there now. But is that Tavares McFadden, I hope he'll have a better career in the NFL because of the system he's in with the 49ers. But as far as what he did in FSU, I hate him for what he did last season. Like that hurt my heart. That hurt my heart.
When you get mossed by a dude who plays 2 plays in the game, I mean, obviously you're not doing really well. I did not play football in the college level especially, so I cannot speak to the quality or realness of mat drills just because I see the videos and nothing else. So I don't know that from the inside like you do. So you know what? You might be throwing shots, you might not be, but you probably are. So back that up. But it just.
And y'all version of mat drills is better than that fourth quarter match that Jimbo had us doing. So
I mean, it's funny where it's funny to hear people just trash Jimbo so much now after the one season, and like especially just on so many levels. Like the man won y'all the national championship, got y'all up there in 2013, had elite recruiting every single year, had y'all stacked with talent. And I know that the performance last year was not what you want it to be, but I just don't necessarily think that the rampant trashing of Jimbo is rooted in reality.
Oh, it's very much so. See, the thing is that most people only look at the surface. Here's the thing. What was before 2013? Actually, take away 2013 and 2014 and tell me who Jimbo Fisher is. Like, before you answer that.
No.
If all Mark Richt does for you right now is win you 10 games and you lose in 10 games and you have 3 losses, will you be satisfied in 5 years?
Will I be satisfied in 5 years? No, but I said that about Jimbo Fisher before. I wrote that actually. I've said it on Twitter. I've actually put that on the website saying that without a generational talent at quarterback and or running back, being Jameis Winston and Dalvin Cook, he's a 9-4, 10-3 type dude.
Now you see why FSU fans, like what happened is they woke up. And it's not just that. First and foremost, when Jimbo came over, there was an LSU fan I think he's a coach, but I think he uses the Twitter handle. He puts information out there. He said Jimbo Fisher is a consistent 9-3, consistent 9-4 coach. He's saying in big games he can adjust, but he doesn't. He gets tight. You see it with the development. Now he could get you a quarterback in the NFL, which is cool. The goal is just to put people in the NFL. He does a great job. Similar with what Al Golden was able to do, and what your coaches before CMR were able to do. Tons of talent in the NFL. But that's when you step back and you look at how many of these guys have gone, and you look at the results, and then you look at what the losses were. So when you see a 2012 and you lose to NC State, that doesn't make sense. You start to scratch your head. How do you lose to NC State like that? Okay, and then you go to Florida, it was a competition of who could lose that game. You play a terrible game against Florida. Without that loss to Florida, we would be talking about Florida we would have 8 straight wins against Florida. So then you go to 2013 and you have, again, generational talent and quarterback that has a grasp of offense that very few people can get. Now, granted, he's weird as Halloween with a full moon at midnight. But he is a generator. The boy can play football. He knows his X's and O's. Then you have Dalvin Cook. And when you have Dalvin Cook in a situation in his last year, you don't obviously you don't want to run the ball 30 times. You don't have an offense designed that way. But you probably make concessions when you have a redshirt freshman quarterback who is not Jameis Winston. So there are times when he stopped giving the ball to Dalvin. In particular, when you look at the Michigan game and the bowl game, I counted 14 straight pass plays without even looking at Dalvin Cook. That was during the time when Michigan mounted this comeback. Jim Harbaugh's a good coach. He ain't that good of a coach. We stopped doing what was working, a good coach adjustments. Now you move into last season. Jimbo does recruit elite talent. Elite talent can get you 6 to 7 wins without any coaching. The reason why FSU fans are mad, not just because of you minus the elite, the 2 years of 13 and 14, when you find out the things that you find out in behind the scenes, that Jimbo started flirting with Texas A&M after the Alabama loss and after Texas A&M lost to UCLA, you start looking at the games and you start looking at where were their laps in game plan and preparation. Congratulations, kudos. I'm one of those guys that doesn't talk trash about a rival when they beat us. So my mouth is really essentially shut until after Miami FSU play and if we win. But you cannot tell me, especially after the stats that you put out, 25% completion. You have that game all but one. You have that game in a situation where you drive down with a true freshman quarterback and score, and you allow your defensive coordinator to play so passive. I want to say you guys you averaged 10 yards per play in 2 back-to-back drives in order to win the game. An elite defense, elite talent does not do that. And don't get me wrong, I joke about Tavares McFadden, but no matter how bad he is, he ain't that bad. You put him in a situation to win. Forget that. Boston College, even though Boston College is one of the teams coming back next season with the most draft-graded players, you do not get blanketed by Boston College.
Yeah, that was crazy.
You saw a team give up on a coach because a coach chased the money. Nobody cares about the $7.5 million a year. I'd take that. Matter of fact, if you ask me to coach at UM for $7.5 million, at UF for $7.5 million a year, I'm going to have to consider it. I get that part, but it's the way you leave, and then you leave and you trash the program. So in turn, Karma's a beat. Jimbo's getting a lot of what he gave. All he had to do was say, guys, I'm leaving because they're giving me guaranteed $75 million in 10 years. Now, the FSU fan would cry. But when you gave us that trash season, and then when you left, you kicked everybody in the butt on the way out. Nah, dude. I hope nothing but the worst for Texas A&M. And you called them a better program. You can't call somebody a better program who hasn't won a national championship since Technicolor. For those who don't understand what Technicolor is, that's before World War II. And not very many people are alive that have seen that national championship, except for one FSU fan, Karen Key Largo. I think she was alive during World War II, and she loves Jimbo.
Wow. I was not expecting to hear a KKL drop at the end of that that ran. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
All right, it was not about FSU Miami. You didn't make me talk about Jimbo. That's how, man. Anyways, I see you in the street.
I mean,
Jimbo.
yeah, hey, like, you know, look, I'm just saying, like, it just seems to me, because now you put it in terms that other Florida State fans don't, you know, and I'm kind of the same way. Like, when I write something, maybe from a pragmatic standpoint, it's not necessarily 100%, you know, former player or fan, you know, sided, just, you know, angry vitriol. Like, there's a little bit of a brain, you know, that goes with it, some thought that went into what you said. So that kind of sentiment I will agree with, and it makes sense. But most people aren't saying that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's just they're talking hurt, you know, the hit dog kind of hollering kind of thing. But you know, and I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, like, you have a person who leaves like that. I mean, at least when Butch Davis went to the Browns, he called the team. And it's funny because I was walking with my buddy who was the backup punter at the time, and I think Najee Davenport was in the class that I was walking to. And both of them, like, you see all the players walking across campus to go over to the Hecht. And he told everybody straight up, like, yo, they offered me a boatload, like a real boatload truck of cash, and I'm going to go take that. So, you know, I'm being upfront with it, as opposed to, you know, where Jimbo had a guaranteed contract with y'all. And so you couldn't actually fire him. It was just if he left and took this other guaranteed contract or not, because, you know, like, whatever.
And he did it every year, and they gave him
right.
what he wanted.
Exactly. So I can see a little bit where the hurt feelings come from, but you know, it's always good to have a rival. You know what I mean? To have somebody that you like have as a measuring stick, because like Miami wants to beat Florida State, and I know that they're doing drills now. There's the look. We got one. They had 7 in a row. We're trying to get 2. Like, and I know that, like, you're talking about when you were there, before you were there, after you're there, currently. I know Florida State's doing the same thing for Miami, but it's a great rivalry. It's not as Hatfield and McCoy's as either of our teams against Florida or Michigan, Ohio State, where, like, I have friends from Michigan who grew up in Michigan who's never been to the state of Ohio, because that's how much that rivalry means to people. It's not that same kind of thing. It really is more of, at least on my side of the street, having, you know, been there and seen every game since 2000, pretty well, not every game, but every home game since 2000 in person. I mean, there's at least a level of respect between Miami and Florida State players and fans, and as a program, even if we don't necessarily like each other that day, that is refreshing. And hopefully, you know, Miami will continue to win, but, you know, we just hopefully we'll continue to do that, and the rivalry can be great.
I put it in this perspective. I got a family who likes Miami. I go down to Miami all the time. Matter of fact, I'll watch the Miami FSU game with them. And after the 7 straight losses that they had, 7 straight wins we had, after we beat us, hey man, let's go get some crack conch from some Jamaican spot. I don't know the name of it, from down there somewhere in the hood. So let's go get some seafood. And then after we lost this year, I'm sitting there all distraught, mad. You know what he told me? Hey, bro, let's go get some conch. Let's go get some food. It's kind of one of those things, like, you know. But the other part of it, nobody purposely vacations in Gainesville
at all.
Like, I wouldn't go to Gainesville. Like, I'll go to Miami, and the best people to go to Miami are probably people who are there, and so you'll see your friends and you'll hang out with them. Plus, the other side of it is too, is when I was coming up, I figured most of those guys would be in the NFL anyway. So it's, you know, you're gonna probably be teammates with one of these guys in some capacity. Not as many people went to the NFL from the other school when I was in there. They've done a good job with they did a good job with Meyer, but he's gone now. So
yeah. I mean, but that was like obviously at the height of their program ever since Spurrier, because, you know, in '96 when they're doing Fun and Gun, and then obviously with Urban, they're doing that. And I mean, they still have been doing some good stuff on defense. I don't know what their recruiting is going to be like, because they love them some defensive backs up in Gainesville. I don't know about the other positions that they try to recruit, but they love them some DBs, boy, let me tell you. So they always have 6, 7, 8, 10 of those in the class. But yeah, I mean, nobody's going to go there.
Speaking of recruiting, what are your thoughts on? I mean, obviously, you guys had a really good class last year, talent perspective, but just from a purely analytical perspective, and not trolling. What do you think about not really fulfilling that depth, that lack of depth at D tackle, especially when you got guys that left early? Like, you got Nesta, who's very talented. You got a young man from here in Jacksonville who kind of rose up the ranks, but probably isn't ready to play this year. And I think before the signing day, what did you have? 2 scholarship defensive tackles on? Like, what is Like, does that not concern you? Like, is it concern that Mark is going out, just getting guys, but not necessarily doesn't seemingly are getting guys that you actually need?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a concern, and I think it's on both lines. And actually, it's funny. I was just talking with Mark about that when we were doing a little kind of position preview or whatever. But yeah, both sides of the line were really kind of iffy on recruiting. I know that we got a couple more numbers on offensive line than like defensive tackle, and I think that it's a good move, or it looks like a good move now for Kuligowski to go to Alabama, and then we get another coach in here, and Jess Simpson, who was a high school legend in Georgia. He was an assistant with the Falcons, and he's already, to my eye, had more success recruiting defensive line than Kuligowski. And Kuligowski's put all kinds of dudes in the league, all kinds of dudes first-round draft pick, all kinds of dudes SEC player of the year, Big 12 player or defensive player of the year. I know that, but a couple people that I know have called him Cowboy Cool, and he's a good coach, but he wasn't really about that South Florida recruiting grind. And it's a different beast over here. And when he's not closing on those guys because he wants the logo to recruit itself or whatever, like, that's cool, but you got to do something. Now he can go to Alabama and just say, look, we Alabama. You trying to get down or not? Because if you're not trying to get down, I'm gonna just go call the next dude. And that's a different interaction than you really got to hit the ground. You really got to get with those kids. You really got to press the action in recruiting, I think, more from a Miami standpoint than he was willing to do or used to doing. So it was concerning to only get, a Nesta who's going to play this year, and then Jordan Miller, who was, from the middle of nowhere. I mean, Palatka, I don't even know where that is in Florida. Before he went to Jacksonville Sandalwood. So, and yeah, Miller, he's probably going to be a kid who takes that 4-game redshirt rule where maybe late in the year he gets a little experience and keeps that redshirt. We're going to get a grad transfer from Illinois at D tackle. You get Gerald Willis III back off of a leave of absence, and hopefully he's the beast that everybody says he was on scout team and whatnot. But yeah, from a narrative and analytical standpoint, however you want to look at it, on the defensive line and offensive line, I think there's much to be desired in recruiting. And hopefully what we have on the roster now, especially at defensive tackle, which you asked about, hopefully we can get by enough and have the top line players do what they need to do. And then you get a Pat Bethel, hopefully has some development. John Ford has some development. So you get maybe, 4 guys. And then Demetrius Jackson, he can play and he can flex inside sometimes. And he's done that for the last couple of years. So now you got 4, maybe 5 guys with the grad transfer on D tackle who can play during games. It's not perfect depth, but it's better than the 2 scholarship guys that we had on signing day. So it's hopefully in a passable spot. But yeah, I would definitely like to see, with our new defensive line coach, the whole defensive line recruiting, especially inside, get better.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, outside of that, the class was pretty. The class was pretty good. That was the only thing that I was like, man, I would have thought that. There's a lot of Miami fans, a lot of people I know were like, we got top 5 class, or top 3, I think.
Because we did at a time.
Yeah, at the time, but I told, and especially because you did a really good job on the early signing period. And the first thing that I said, I'm like, guys, you did. I'm not knocking that. The problem with the fact that you guys signed almost a full class on signing day is that there's still a lot of people out there, and you don't have a lot of room. And I'm like, you didn't solve the need per se. It's like you got better in places, but you got to hide some stuff. But and I think, to be honest with you, the biggest recruiting job that Mark Richt has to do this year, which I think you might get one of them to stay because the kid is smart and he really wants to get his degree. I don't think the other kids staying, and if either one of them stay, I think it's foolish. But Shaq Quarterman and your why can't I think of the young man, the other man from Jacksonville, Rain's name?
Pinckney.
Yeah, Pinckney. I don't like if the biggest recruiting job that Mark Richt has is keeping some of these talented juniors home, is getting them to come back for their senior year.
Yeah, and that's the thing that obviously, they're going to need to work on. And it didn't really go well last year. And I think that part and parcel of Coach Kuligowski kind of just saying, look, if you want to be here at Miami, great. If you don't, cool. and whatever, because he was kind of halfway out the door to Alabama. And that's why, McIntosh and Norton went and got drafted in like the 5th and 6th rounds. But, let me ask you this. In general, how do you feel about Willie Taggart's recruiting right now?
Recruiting? I mean, good.
Yeah.
Probably about as confident as you guys were, not using this as a snapback, but about as confident as you guys were at early signing period. I see a lot of people try to make something of it, and it's really foolish, in my opinion, because they're saying that we're not getting people on campus, but every day we're getting people on campus. It's quite one of the things that I think is lost from Willie Taggart's strategy is a family vibe. You can't get a family vibe when you constantly have 200 kids on this campus. And the more you can get to personally know some of these recruits, the better it is and the better your odds are for actually landing them. And his ability to close, who am I to question? We were very much so in it for 2 guys who ended up not coming. Those guys come, and you talking about FSU going from a 65th and 247, and I want to know 65th in rivals and like 70 and 247 to a top 10 class. And I think we just finished like 11 and 12 in both 247 and rivals. The close was epic. So I know what he can do with a little bit of time. And he's had a lot of things that he's had to catch up with in a short amount of time. I mean, the guy's been there since November. He had to salvage a recruiting class. He had to hire coaches, and he had to try to put together a recruiting board for 2019 all at the same time. It's very difficult. But the one thing I've heard of everybody who's going on a recruiting visit is they absolutely love it, and they like him. Not to make it what it isn't, but when he comes into your living room, it's different than when somebody else comes into your living room. I got a chance to get to know Willie Taggart from when UF went through their saga when they fired Coach McElwain. When they fired him, I got a call from a booster that I wasn't supposed to get a call from because I ain't a UF grad, but we were talking, and they talked to me about Willie Taggart. And I had never even put all of those things together. Then I'm thinking he lost his mother. He didn't lose his mother. I hope, God, please don't lose your mom. He lost his father, and then his mom was a little sick. My man's on the West Coast. He's a Florida boy. He want to come back home if the opportunity's good. But I'm sitting here thinking in my head, I don't like Florida. But if Willie Taggart goes to Florida, and what I've heard and what I've seen about Willie Taggart, man, that's for my son, and Mark heard me talk the other day about it. If that guy comes to my door and says he wants to recruit my son, I gotta listen. Like, I'm going to listen. And when I look at that, and then so when he comes in and you hear about the FSU fan, and yes, there are some things that's quirky. There's a lot of quirky things about a lot of these coaches. There's some things that are cool. I actually like the personalized gifts. People picked on him about us having the young man from Orlando commit, and they put the Mickey Mouse thing on there. Hell, I got a 5-year-old now. I like Mickey Mouse. It's cool. Mickey Mouse is an OG. So I ain't got no problems with that. But he's probably he's a breath of fresh air, and is more Bowden-like than what Jimbo was. Jimbo had an opportunity to be iconic at FSU, even outside of the other things. But I think his energy was, I got to make people forget about Bowden, which is the exact opposite of what you do. Bowden is a god in Tallahassee.
True.
And Taggart back and embraced it. And I was never able to not have access when Jimbo was there. I was asked to have access when Taggart was there. It's a difference.
Okay.
So now, that being said, this is still FSU. We're not used to the coaching search thing. He got 2 years. Really, he's got this year. Like, if it does, I'm not saying to win a national championship. They can go 8-5. It just depends on how you go 8-5 at FSU. If you're going 8-5 and you're, winning some you're losing some close games, but you can see the energy levels there, they're going to give you a pass in the year 2. But you can't be year 3 and FSU is not competing for at least the ACC championship. Because the thing that Jimbo was going to, I don't want to go out on a limb and say he would have been fired, but he would have been on the hot seat if he would have done the same thing, if we wouldn't have had a transitional year this year, because what he allowed in his arrogance was for Clemson to create a monster.
Big facts.
Like Alabama, but fun. And that actually makes me more afraid than a Florida or a Miami, because I believe they got something good there with Dabo. I'm kind of hoping that Saban retires so that they just go and put the Brinks truck out of Clemson and they ain't got to worry about that headache no more. They don't have to worry about that once a year. But I think Taggart, the way he's recruiting, the way he's relating to these guys, the way he's relating to the staff and their way of recruiting and the way in the staff he's put together, that I think in a couple of years you'll see a lot of people start to replicate that same model. That's my thought process.
Okay, I mean that's fair. So I was just trying to see where your head was at and everything. So
Dugans, but it's all good.
I mean, Dugans knows that he's in a better spot. So why is he going, leave the penthouse to go back down to the trash, bro? Like he's moving on up like George and Weasley, bro. He over here now.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, I got, he's getting paid. I respect it. His daughter at Miami and all that other stuff. I ain't mad at him.
Yeah, I mean, all that, so. But I mean, y'all made a run at him, and I know that Georgia made a run at our tight ends coach, and we were able to keep both of them. Thank goodness, especially tight ends coach, because he's the one who has us recruiting in Jacksonville so hard right now, Hartley, and whatnot.
I mean,
but
I'm gonna be honest, Jacksonville, you can have it right now. But
all right then.
Now, because 2020 is crazy. Like the talent that's coming out. We got talent in 2019. Jacksonville will always have talent. But 2020, I think you guys are, if you haven't offered, you're offering young man from Mandarin High School, quarterback that UF and Alabama have just offered. And then I think Sims from out of Sandalwood is going to be we got 3 or 4 2020 quarterbacks alone. So if you got good quarterbacks.
Well, I mean, you got Brad Johnson's son, Max, who is Mark Richt's nephew from Georgia. He's a 2020 as well. So I know that fits, but we're probably harder on Max Johnson than anybody else. So I know there's options, but, there'll be things that happen. But, look, last year in 17, Hartler got a couple guys out of Jacksonville. He got like 3, I want to say. You got 3 in 16. You got 3 in 17. You got another couple in 18. And then you got Jeremiah Payton from Fletcher, who's probably one of the best wide receivers in the state, coming down now. So, I mean, I'm just all I'm saying about Jacksonville, even for next year, is this: we've been there with the same coach for a minute. So,
I was from a quality standpoint. The 3 you got in 16 are that was 3.
Yeah,
that was good. That was solid. You got some good. You got some solid talent with that. I mean, you're recruiting well. It's just about, can you get it right now? It's not about, our rivalry is there. It's about when you get to that game, are you going to get, you can't have the PlayStation get reset on you again.
Yeah, no. I mean, and that's true. Like you gotta perform, and that's the thing. Like with everything that you do in recruiting, there has to be proof of concept with winning, and so you gotta do that.
Another question.
Yeah.
The division that you guys are in, the Coastal, outside of being a Miami fan and your recruiting stuff, how can you be so confident that you'll repeat? Not because for any other reason, that the Coastal is consistently a turnstile in who wins it. I mean, you have almost everybody on that side has won with a similar record. So like Tech win with a 10-3, Duke win with a 10-3, Virginia Tech has won. I think that's just y'all. I think it's just some variation of those. Like, and what are your thoughts on that?
No, the answer is just like you joked on me earlier, and it was true, because Al Golden. You know what I mean? Like when Miami is not even close to being recognizable as Miami, then that's when you have other teams that can pop up from year to year. Like, yeah, you had a nice Georgia Tech season. You had a nice Virginia Tech couple seasons and whatever. But if Miami has always had the best talent, so you got to have the players, first of all. We have a coach who knows what he's doing, not trying to figure it out. We got staffers who know what they're doing, not trying to figure it out. And we got guys who are really hungry now, especially because they've gotten a taste of greatness. And it wasn't even, because look, everybody was smelling themselves with 10-0, and you had to. Even with the shortcomings, even with, Rozier not being great, even with some turnovers, even with some injuries, all those kind of things. But if you have a Miami program that is even, if it's recognizable as Miami, which I think that we're becoming again, not saying that was going to be 2001 again, like, nah. But if you see a Miami that's actually a Miami, the assumption in the Coastal has to be Miami's going to win, and then somebody else has to prove me otherwise. Because that's just, we have way more talent than everybody else. And especially if you got a little taste of winning the last couple of years, 9 wins, 10 wins, back-to-back seasons. Yeah, we're in a point right now where another team is going to have to prove me something. Is it going to be Georgia Tech? I don't know, because Mark Richt has always owned Georgia Tech. I think he's like 17-2 or 18-2 against them lifetime across 2 different schools. So that should be easy. Duke, trash. North Carolina, they could probably be competitive. Virginia Tech, who knows if they're even going to have their quarterback. And if they don't have Josh Jackson back, if he gets kicked out of school or suspended from the team, then I don't really see them giving us any kind of trouble. So honestly, yeah, if Miami is anything like Miami, then it's our division and somebody else has to prove me otherwise. And that's really how I feel about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. If all those schools are at their best or anywhere close to their best, the rest of them have to be at an A, and Miami's got to be about a C for it to be competitive. And Miami's been the best roster, I think, in that division for quite a few years, but it's just turned out where they've lost the wrong games. They always have to play you guys where everybody else gets the break and doesn't have to always play Florida State or Clemson. So they automatically have a challenge in the non-division schedule that not everybody has to face. Now, Georgia Tech does because they always face Clemson, but Miami's got the best roster, the best talent pool, and the best facilities and resources and everything else in that division. And obviously the best recruiting base, which trumps everything else. So Miami's got to be at a C level and somebody else at an A and I think that's what's happened over the last 10 years up until what we see right now. And one other thing, I hate to break this up. I could definitely listen to you guys all night. Seriously, I could listen to you guys go back and forth all night because it's been much better than me interrupting with actual questions for you guys just mixing it up. But the 2 things I will add before I got to let you guys go, because I always respect my guest time and I've got Tennessee talk here at 9 o'clock. That number 1, it was a good call on the Texas A&M Technicolor because I looked it up. 1939 was the last time the Aggies won a national championship. Ironically, that was the last time the Wizard of Oz, that's when it was released. And obviously, the Wizard of Oz, they actually put that in Technicolor way back before anything else was in color, obviously after the fact. So that's the call on there. James, I would love to discuss the Mark Richt and probably have Cam on for the ride as well, the Mark Richt narrative, because unless you're just a guy that counts national championships as being big games, he has won big games at Georgia. He's won the SEC when the SEC was the best conference.
He won it twice, right?
At least twice. 0205
in a decade. So to my point, we're a top 5 coach. Like, and not just, let me rephrase it. So not just 2. He won the SEC East 3 times, I believe.
At least 3 times.
With 4
times that I can think of off the top of my head. At least 4.
Who was the all-time leader in wins in the NCAA when he was done, and a guy who's still in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. Now, he ran into Alabama. I'm just looking at it from a standpoint as if he's that good of a coach, and I'm not saying he is or he isn't. I respect Mark Richt's mind. He got to Georgia before, and Saban had to restart twice. Saban had to restart at LSU, and he had to restart at Alabama.
Sure.
He got to Georgia when Florida was down. Florida had to reboot, and he still, in that amount of time, even the East, only won 4 times. So you allowed another coach from, at that time, a mid-major in Utah to come into the toughest conference, if I'm to believe that narrative, and build a dynasty level talent under your watch. And he stormed you. And Florida, I don't really remember. I just go off of what they tell me. I can't believe Florida Twitter as far as I can throw the building of Twitter. But let Florida tell you they have had recent success against Georgia. So when I say has never won a game that matters, I'm talking about now. Again, he could beat FSU because he beat me in the Sugar Bowl at Georgia, and he beat FSU last year. But it's the consistency of a coach. Like I asked my man here, if his coach only won 10 games for 5 years, average. Now that's good success. Would you be happy as a coach? Would you be happy as a fan? That's Mark Richt.
Well,
He's a consistent 10-win coach.
So I think most fans, and I don't want to speak for either one of you, but I think most fans of elite programs, there might be some exceptions, but reasonable fans would be frustrated with 10-3, 10-3, 10-3, 10-3, because it would be like, when are we going to get over the hump? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? It never happens. But if you had the same winning percentage, but you did it like 8-5, 9-4, boom, 13-1, college football playoff for a national championship. Then back 8-5, 9-4, and the winning percentage was the same, but you took a few downers at 8-5, 9-4, but boom, you spiked with college football playoff appearances and conference championships,
right,
versus just doing what he did at Georgia, which was basically, outside of winning the SEC those 2 or 3 times in the East, a couple other times, he basically was just so consistent, but he lost the key games. You're right, mostly to Florida and some Tennessee games and some SEC championship games, that he was just very consistent. But fans would rather see the spikes, and they'll live with the downers if you give them some spikes. And he wasn't able to do that necessarily at Georgia, although that 2012 team was that close. And I don't know that you can fault a coach when a guy gets tackled at the 4-yard line. It's like Jim Harbaugh losing the Super Bowl when Colin Kaepernick can't find an open receiver in the end zone and time runs out. I don't, when you take him to the brink, you can't actually execute the blocks and the passes on the field for him.
And that's the thing with Miami. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like when we fired Larry Coker and everything, because obviously through Butch's, the end of Butch's tenure and through the beginning of Larry Coker's, it was, we lost the second game of my freshman year in 2000, didn't lose again until my senior year. You know what I mean? So like, you're trying to chase that and everything. And yeah, you want to have that, that floor of 9-3 regular season, and then, have those spikes like Mark's talking about, but you can also get burned trying to chase that. And if you look at Miami over the course of the last 10 years before Mark Richt got here, that's exactly what happened to us. We're trying to, chase the moonlight, if you will, and just trying to capture that, and we couldn't. So, I don't obviously want to say that I want to be 10-3 every year. Like, okay, we're just going to make that. Like, no, I obviously want to not lose a damn Pittsburgh game and not lose to Wisconsin, which is a team that we were about on the brink of blowing out because they couldn't run with us. They couldn't keep up with our athletes. And then Malik Rozier throws one of the stupidest interceptions I've ever seen in my entire life, and gave them the opening to come back into that game, because when they got that ball back, then they say, cool, well, now we're going to lean on you. We're going to grind on you. We're going to take that speed element away. So, and just like we talked about, if you don't have those 2 games, you're talking, instead of 10-3, you're talking 12-1. And even if you beat Pittsburgh and had a more competitive score against Clemson, there's a very good chance that still could have been college football playoff. But that's the margin for error there that's so tiny, where if you don't hit those shots when you have the ability, that's when things can kind of go off the rails. So, 10-win average, that's obviously better than going 6-7 and having 9 guys drafted like we did a few years ago, which was like one of the first times in the longest time that you had more guys drafted to the NFL than wins that the team had, which is ridiculous. But, hopefully with Mark Richt coming down here and changing his coaching interaction slightly, instead of being such a CEO coach and just overseeing everything, he's being more engaged in the day-to-day. He's obviously calling plays again, which he hasn't done since his early years at Georgia. Hopefully those little tweaks will pay off with big results for Miami moving forward.
The only advice I have for Miami fans is this: you guys got to stop acting like everybody hates you, because nobody hates Mark Richt. You have the incarnate, you have the second, you have like I know Coach Bowden had a direct connect with God. Tim Tebow is Jesus' nephew. Mark somewhere in those things. Like, you can't hate Miami because Mark Richt is there. That's why I'm like, guys, you that's the only thing that doesn't stand out. Like, that's the only thing that I'm like, man, like Dennis Erickson, a-hole. Jimmy Johnson time a-hole.
Straight up.
Schnellenberger, old a-hole. But cool. I like the old school. I like Schnellenberger. But some of these guys you like, then Mark Richt. Like you wanna hear him recite the Lord's Prayer. Like, you want to see that. It's like that's why I was just telling people, like, man, y'all get over that. Nobody hates you guys. No, because
my counterpoint is people hate Miami. I think people still do hate Miami. They hate the logo. They hate the institution and the thought of Miami, but they don't hate Miami for Mark Richt being an a-hole. So it's like a different thing. Like I get that he's a very pious guy. I get he's a very likable guy, all those kind of things. But like just the general specter of Miami, because a lot of people remember those ass kickers that we gave to them years ago. And they're like, nah, we hate that. You get obviously with this millennial culture of the turnover chain and everybody like, yo, I got that. They're like, it's a different vibe. And I know that could rub people the wrong way. But whatever they dislike about Miami, I will agree with you. It's definitely not Mark Richt, because like, how can you hate him?
You guys are Drake. Nobody really hates Drake except for Pusha T. Like Drake, no matter how tough Drake raps on his songs, and you can vibe with it, and you like gangsters can vibe to it. It's still Drake.
I don't even think that we're Drake though, because like I think that there's more people who openly, honestly dislike us than Drake, and it might not be abject hatred to that level, but like I don't know about that one. I have to think about that and get back to you.
My daughter says she wants to hear "Nice for What." I'm playing "Nice for What," and I'm gonna bob my head to it. It's just okay. Like, it's the perfect example. It's no knock. It's just kind of like we like Mark Richt. Like we can't hate.
Okay, I'll take it.
All right, guys. It's been tremendous. You guys are welcome anytime. You already know that. Cam Underwood, State at the U, been contributing here forever, and it's been a long time in terms of online life. But join him and the rest of the staff there at State at the U, Miami football coverage and athletics across the board. James Coleman, Gridiron Now, doing great work for us in the last several months, talking up Florida State football. This is tremendous, and this is why you subscribe to Mark Rogers TV. We bring on the very best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry, and you guys are at the top of the list. You guys are tremendous. We got to make room for some Tennessee talk. I'm sure you guys have a lot of respect for the Tennessee Volunteers, but I won't let you comment because I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Appreciate you guys. Take care. It's been awesome, and come back soon. The invite will be in your email or Twitter DM here very soon. You both know that. So anytime you guys can jump on, I will take it. Everybody stay tuned for Tennessee with Mike LaValle. Last word on college football. Thanks, guys.